The chandelier lights inside the Plaza Hotel glowed like a promise that night. Warm, golden, and impossibly calm. Outside the tall windows, the Manhattan skyline shimmered, distant traffic humming like a steady heartbeat. Inside the bridal suite, Lillian Hartman stood alone in a custom ivory gown, her hands trembling as she smoothed invisible wrinkles from the fabric. In less than 3 minutes, the doors would open. In less than 3 minutes, she would walk down the aisle and become Mrs. Christopher Hale. Lily had planned hundreds of luxury weddings, but this one, her own, felt unreal. The silence pressed against her ears. She checked the time on her iPhone again. 6:57 p.m. Guests were already seated. The string quartet was warming up. Her father's doctor had texted earlier with an update that made her chest tighten, but she pushed it away. Tonight was supposed to be perfect. Tonight was supposed to mean something. She took a breath and stepped into the hallway, intending to find her fiancé and share a final, quiet moment before the ceremony. That was when she heard his voice. Chris was standing around the corner, his back turned, phone pressed to his ear. His tone was low, urgent, intimate. Lily stopped without thinking, her heels frozen against the marble floor. "No, not now," he said softly. "After the ceremony. You know the timing matters." Lily's stomach dropped. There was a pause, then Chris exhaled, a sound that carried irritation, not love. "Sabrina, listen to me. This wedding is necessary. One appearance, one clean image. Then we do things our way." The name hit Lily like a slap. She leaned closer, her pulse roaring so loudly she feared he'd hear it. Chris paced, running a hand through his hair, the same gesture he used when negotiating contracts. "I told you. The investors want stability, a wife, family optics. After that, I'll handle the separation quietly. You'll get what I promised." Lily's vision blurred. On the other end of the call, a woman laughed, soft, confident, cruel. "Just don't forget who's really on your side," Sabrina said. "I didn't wait all this time to be your secret." Chris lowered his voice even more. "You won't be. Just give me tonight." Tonight. The word echoed in Lily's head as the hallway tilted. The wedding coordinator's voice drifted faintly from the ballroom. 30 seconds, everyone." 30 seconds ago, Lily had been a bride. Now she was standing in a hallway at the Plaza Hotel, wearing a gown that suddenly felt like a lie, listening to the man she loved negotiate her life like a deal. Her fingers curled into her palms as something cold and steady replaced the shock. The ceremony was about to begin, and Lillian Hartman had just realized she was marrying a stranger. Lillian didn't move after the call ended. She stood frozen in the corridor, the air around her suddenly too thin, too sharp. Chris slipped his phone into his jacket and turned, nearly colliding with her. For half a second, his confident expression cracked. Then it reset, smooth, practiced, reassuring. "Lily," he said, smiling as if nothing had happened. "There you are. Everyone's waiting." His voice was gentle, familiar, and completely false. She searched his face, hoping, stupidly, that she had misunderstood, that there was another Sabrina, another explanation. But his eyes avoided hers for just a fraction of a second, and that was enough. Lily knew that look. She'd seen it in boardrooms when vendors hid bad news behind polished slides. "I needed some air," she said calmly, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Chris nodded, relieved. "Big moment. I get it." He reached for her hand, his palm warm, grounding once. Now it made her skin crawl. "You ready?" "Ready." The word echoed like a dare. From the ballroom, applause erupted as guests settled into their seats. The string quartet began the opening notes. Time was moving forward whether Lily was ready or not. She glanced past Chris, catching her reflection in a mirrored column. The woman staring back looked flawless. Perfect hair, perfect dress, perfect bride. No one could see the fracture running straight through her chest. 2 minutes, the coordinator whispered as she hurried by. 2 minutes ago, Lily had believed in forever. Now, she believed in survival. She gently withdrew her hand from Chris's grip. "I left something in the suite," she said. "My vow card." Chris frowned. "You memorized them." "I know," she replied, "but I want it with me." A beat passed. Then he smiled again. "Of course. I'll be right here." Lily turned away before he could read her face. With each step, her heartbeat slowed, not from calm, but from focus. Panic would destroy her. Silence would protect her. She had planned weddings long enough to understand one brutal truth. Chaos favors the guilty. Control favors the prepared. Inside the bridal suite, she locked the door and leaned against it, finally letting the weight crash down. Her breath came fast, shallow. She pressed a hand to her mouth to keep from screaming. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. He hadn't loved her. He had scheduled her. Her phone vibrated. A text message. Unknown number. "He's lying to you. I thought you deserved to know." Attached was a photo. Chris, unmistakable, seated at a bar. His hand rested possessively on a woman's thigh. Time-stamped 3 weeks ago. Sabrina. Lily stared at the screen until the shaking stopped. Something inside her hardened, reshaping itself into resolve. This wasn't a moment to fall apart. This was a moment to decide who she would be when the music stopped. From the hallway came Chris's voice, muffled but impatient. "Lily, they're about to open the doors." She straightened, wiped her eyes, and unlocked the suite. The ceremony was beginning, and Lillian Hartman was done being blindsided. The doors to the ballroom remained closed, but the sound inside was unmistakable. Chairs shifting, muted coughs, the soft rustle of expensive fabric. The ceremony had begun without the bride. A deliberate pause, the coordinator had said. A dramatic breath before the entrance. No one suspected that the delay wasn't planned. Lillian stood just beyond the doors, her back straight, her hands folded neatly at her waist. If anyone looked closely, they might have noticed how pale her knuckles were, how carefully she controlled each breath. She could still feel the echo of Chris's voice in her ears, the way he had said, necessary instead of love. The way he had reduced her to a role he needed filled. Across the room, hidden behind a partition, Adrian Brooks observed quietly. He hadn't meant to intrude earlier in the hallway. He'd been stepping away from a phone call with his legal team when voices carried, low, urgent, careless. Years in corporate negotiations had trained him to recognize deception the way some people recognized perfume. When he saw Lily standing there afterward, white-faced and silent, he understood immediately that something was wrong. He approached slowly, keeping his voice low. "Ms. Hardman," he said, offering a small nod. "If you need a moment, I can have them hold." Lily looked at him then. Really looked. Adrian Brooks wasn't smiling, wasn't pretending nothing was happening. His eyes held a calm seriousness that felt like solid ground. "How long?" she asked. "As long as you need," he replied. "But not a second longer than you choose." That was the first kindness she'd felt all night. From the other side of the doors, Chris shifted his weight, checking his watch for the third time. Irritation tightened his jaw. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Lily was usually punctual, composed, predictable. He leaned toward the coordinator. "What's the holdup?" "She'll be out shortly," the woman replied, already nervous. Chris's phone buzzed. A message from Sabrina. "Don't mess this up." His fingers tightened around the device. He typed back quickly. "It's under control."
It wasn't. Lily closed her eyes for a brief second. Images flashed through her mind. Late nights planning other people's perfect moments, telling herself that patience was love, compromise was strength. She realized now how often she had minimized her own instincts just to keep the peace. Tonight, that pattern ended. She reached into the small clutch resting on a side table and pulled out her phone. With a steady hand, she opened the voice memo app and replayed what she had recorded earlier in the hallway. Chris's voice filled her ears again, clearer now, undeniable. Proof, not emotion. Proof mattered. Adrian noticed the change in her posture, the subtle shift from shock to intention. "You're not thinking of running," he said quietly. "No," Lily answered. Her voice was calm, but something sharper lived beneath it. "I'm thinking of walking forward." The music inside swelled, reaching the point where the bride should appear. The doors were about to open. Guests leaned forward in anticipation, unaware they were seconds away from witnessing something far more unforgettable than a wedding. Lillian Hartman took one final breath. She wasn't stepping into a ceremony. She was stepping into the truth. The ballroom doors stayed shut, but the tension outside them thickened with every passing second. A subtle ripple moved through the guests inside, confusion masked as curiosity. This wasn't how luxury weddings flowed. Timing was everything, and something was off. Chris felt it. He tugged at the cuff of his tailored jacket, forcing a smile as his mother leaned over to whisper, "Is everything all right?" "Perfect," he replied quickly. "Just nerves." But his foot tapped against the marble floor, betraying him. A few feet away, Lily stood beside Adrian Brooks near the service corridor, partially hidden from view. The contrast between them was striking. She, in white, poised yet wounded. He, in a charcoal suit, still and controlled, like a man used to storms. Adrian glanced at his watch, then at her. "If you proceed," he said carefully, "you should know something." Lily lifted her chin. "Go on." "I wasn't supposed to hear that call," Adrian continued. "But I did. And it confirmed concerns I've had for weeks." He paused, choosing his words. "Christopher Hale has been misrepresenting his personal stability in negotiations. To my board. To our partners." Lily's breath caught. "You mean—" "Yes," Adrian said. "This wedding is part of a larger performance." The word performance cut deep. It matched everything Lily had begun to understand. "Then you already know what he's done." "I know enough," Adrian replied. "And I know this. If you walk away right now without context, he controls the narrative. He paints you as emotional, unreliable." His gaze sharpened. "If you walk forward with intention, you change the story." Lily looked toward the doors. Behind them sat hundreds of guests, investors, and social connections that could make or break careers. She had spent years orchestrating flawless events for people who never knew her name. Tonight, she was the centerpiece and the risk. "What are you offering?" she asked. Adrian didn't hesitate. "Time,"
verification, and protection. My legal team is on site for contract review. My security team controls this wing. If you choose to speak, you won't be cut off. The implication settled heavily. He wasn't just an observer. He was leverage.
From the ballroom, the music faltered, looping awkwardly. A whisper spread. Phones were discreetly silenced, then checked again. Anticipation turned restless. Chris's patience snapped. He strode toward the coordinator. "Open the doors, now." Before she could respond, Adrian stepped forward, his presence commanding without raising his voice. "There's a delay," he said, "approved by venue management." Chris's eyes narrowed. "On what authority?" "Mine," Adrian replied calmly. Recognition flashed. Too late. Chris knew the name, the power behind it. For the first time that evening, uncertainty cracked his confidence. Lily watched the exchange, her pulse steady now. Fear had burned itself out, leaving clarity behind. She reached into her clutch and wrapped her fingers around her phone, feeling the weight of what she carried, truth, finally documented. The doors would open soon, and when they did, this would no longer be Chris's stage. It would be hers. The delay had crossed from curiosity into discomfort. Inside the ballroom, guests shifted in their seats, whispers threading through the rows like static. Phones were discreetly checked beneath tables. This was Manhattan. Time was currency, and something was clearly being spent. In the side corridor, Lily followed Adrian as he led her away from the main doors, heels clicking softly against the marble. Every step felt unreal, as if she were moving through someone else's wedding, someone else's life. "We don't have long," Adrian said quietly. "If we're doing this, we do it clean." He gestured to a uniformed security supervisor waiting near the service elevator. The man nodded once, professional, uncurious. "We've confirmed the guest list," he said. "There's an additional badge checked in under a vendor credential. Sabrina Cole. She's on the 12th floor." Lily's chest tightened. "She's here." "Yes," Adrian replied, "and she shouldn't be." The implication was clear. This wasn't coincidence. It was choreography. Chris, meanwhile, stood near the altar, his smile beginning to strain. He could feel eyes on him now, too many, too sharp. He caught sight of Adrian down the hall, leaning in close to Lily, and a cold unease crept up his spine. This wasn't part of the plan. His phone buzzed again. "Why aren't we starting?" Sabrina texted. "Fix this." Chris typed back with shaking fingers. "Stand by." Lily closed her eyes for a moment as the security supervisor continued. "We can escort Ms. Cole to a private room for questioning, quietly, no scene." "No," Lily said suddenly. Both men looked at her. "She stays," Lily continued, her voice steady. "I don't want her removed before the truth is visible." Adrian studied her, then nodded. "Understood." They moved into a small conference room adjacent to the ballroom. Glass walls frosted just enough to blur shapes, but not movement. Lily sat, smoothing her gown, grounding herself in the sensation of fabric beneath her palms. Fear tried to claw its way back in, but she pushed it down. This wasn't the moment to unravel. Adrian placed a slim folder on the table. "My legal team pulled preliminary documentation," he said. "There are inconsistencies in Chris's disclosures, financial representations tied to his marital status." Lily looked up sharply. "You mean he used me?" "Yes," Adrian said simply. "And if exposed publicly, it voids his credibility." Outside the room, the music inside the ballroom stopped altogether. A hush fell.
The coordinator's voice echoed faintly.
Please remain seated. Chris's jaw clenched. This was no longer salvageable. He took a step toward the corridor, but security subtly blocked his path. Sir, the supervisor said politely, please wait. That was when Chris understood. Whatever Lily had discovered, it had teeth. Inside the conference room, Lily stood. She didn't feel weak anymore. She felt clear. Let's begin, she said. The doors were about to open, and the trap was already closed. The conference room felt colder than the hallway outside, even though nothing about the temperature had changed. Lily could hear her own breathing now, slow, deliberate, each inhale an effort to keep her composure intact. Through the frosted glass walls, shadows moved. People were shifting, waiting, wondering. Adrian's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen, then looked up at Lily. Your family has been notified of the delay, he said carefully. They're asking questions. Lily nodded. She had expected this. Pressure never came from strangers first. It came from the people who loved you, the ones who feared embarrassment more than injustice. As if summoned by the thought, the door opened. Her Aunt Margaret stepped inside, eyes wide with worry, heels clicking too fast against the floor. Lily, she said softly, reaching for her hands. What's going on? Everyone is confused. Chris's mother is in tears. Lily didn't pull away, but she didn't lean in either. I know, she said, and I'm sorry. Sorry? Margaret whispered urgently. This is your wedding. Whatever it is, it can wait. You don't do this to families, to guests, to yourself. There it was, the unspoken rule. Don't ruin the moment. Don't make a scene. Don't be difficult. Lily felt the old instinct rise, the urge to smooth things over, to swallow her pain and protect everyone else from discomfort. She had done it her entire life. But now, with the truth sitting heavy in her chest, the thought of walking down that aisle in silence felt unbearable. Chris's father appeared in the doorway next, his expression stern but controlled. Lillian, he said, using her full name like a warning. Christopher says there's been a misunderstanding. If you have concerns, you can discuss them privately after the ceremony. After. Always after. Adrian watched quietly, saying nothing, allowing Lily the space to decide who would speak for her. She met Margaret's gaze. If I go out there, Lily said slowly, and say nothing, I become part of the lie. Margaret hesitated. Marriage isn't perfect, she said gently. People make mistakes. This isn't a mistake, Lily replied. Her voice didn't shake. It's a plan. Chris's father frowned. What exactly are you accusing my son of? Lily took a breath. Using me. This wedding. To secure financial leverage, while maintaining a relationship with another woman. Silence crashed into the room. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. That's a serious allegation. I know, Lily said. That's why I didn't scream it in the hallway. Adrian finally spoke. There is corroborating evidence, he said calmly, and independent verification. Chris's father stiffened. You're interfering in a private matter. No, Adrian corrected. I'm preventing fraud. The word hung heavy. Lily looked at the door leading to the ballroom, imagining the sea of faces waiting for a fairy tale. She understood the cost of speaking now. The whispers, the judgment, the headlines. But she also understood the cost of silence. She straightened her shoulders. I'm not asking anyone's permission, she said. I'm informing you. Outside, the guests waited.
and Lily was done waiting too. The hallway outside the ballroom felt narrower now, as if the walls themselves were leaning in to listen. Lily stood alone for a moment after her family stepped away, the echoes of their concern still ringing in her ears. She pressed her back lightly against the cool marble and closed her eyes. This was the moment where most women broke. She could feel it, the weight of expectation, the invisible hands pushing her forward towards silence. Be graceful, be understanding. Don't embarrass anyone. Don't ruin what's already been paid for. Lily had built her entire career on making sure moments like this never unraveled. She had saved countless weddings from disaster with calm smiles and quiet compromises.
But this time, the disaster was the groom. She lifted her head and looked at her reflection in the dark glass of a nearby window. For the first time that evening, she didn't see a bride. She saw a woman who had been shrinking herself for years to fit into someone else's plan, someone else's ambition. Adrian reappeared beside her, giving her space, but not distance. "Once those doors open," he said softly, "there's no rewinding this." "I know," Lily replied. "You can still walk away privately," he continued. "We can escort you out the service exit. No statements, no spectacle." Lily imagined it, the quiet escape, the whispers afterward, the rumors that she was unstable, overwhelmed, dramatic. Chris would recover. He would tell his version. People would believe him because it was easier. She shook her head. That would protect him. Adrian studied her face. "And what do you want to protect?" Lily didn't answer right away. She thought of her father in the front row, proud and tired, of her aunt begging her not to make waves, of the guests who thought they were about to witness love. Then she thought of the phone call, of Chris's voice measured and cold, discussing her like a line item. "I want to protect the truth," she said finally, "even if it costs me." From inside the ballroom came the murmur of impatience, followed by the sharp scrape of a chair. The officiant cleared his throat over the microphone, uncertain. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience." Lily felt the shift in energy, confusion turning into anticipation. People leaned forward. Phones were discreetly raised. Chris stood near the altar, jaw tight, smile fixed too hard in place. His eyes darted toward the doors, then back to the guests. He looked like a man waiting for a delayed flight, not a groom waiting for his bride. Lily reached into her clutch and wrapped her fingers around her phone one more time. The recording was still there, untouched, real. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady. "Open the doors," she said. Adrian gave a single nod and signaled to the coordinator. As the ballroom doors began to part, light spilled into the hallway, warm and blinding. The music swelled again, uncertain but obedient. Lily stepped forward, not as a bride walking toward a promise, but as a woman walking toward accountability. And no one inside was ready for what she was about to do. The ballroom doors opened slowly, deliberately, as if the room itself were holding its breath. Light flooded the aisle, warm and golden, casting Lily in a glow that made several guests inhale sharply. To them, this was the moment they had been waiting for, the bride's entrance, the proof that love had arrived on schedule. Lily stepped forward, her posture flawless, her expression serene. A ripple of relief moved through the crowd. Smiles returned, phones lowered. The string quartet corrected itself and played with renewed confidence. From the outside, everything was perfect again. Chris exhaled for the first time in minutes. There she was, on time, composed, predictable. He let his shoulders relax and leaned slightly toward the best man, whispering, "Told you it was nothing." His lips curved into the smile he'd practiced in mirrors and boardrooms alike, the one that said control had been restored. Lily walked slowly, each step measured. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, feel the familiar pull to perform, to reassure.
She recognized the instinct instantly and rejected it just as quickly. This wasn't her stage anymore. This was her line of sight. Halfway down the aisle, she glanced to her left. Sabrina Cole sat near the back, dressed in an elegant charcoal dress that passed easily as wedding appropriate. Her posture was relaxed, almost amused. When her eyes met Lily's, she didn't look away. Instead, she smiled, a small, confident curve of the lips, as if sharing a private joke. There it was, the final confirmation. Lily didn't flinch. She turned her gaze forward again, meeting Chris's eyes as she approached the altar. He reached for her hands instinctively, squeezing them just a little too tightly, as if reminding her where she belonged. "You okay?" he whispered through his smile. "I'm fine," Lily replied. And she was, not fine in the way he meant. Fine in the way a storm is fine before it breaks. The officiant cleared his throat and began. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." As the familiar words filled the room, Lily's mind sharpened instead of drifting. She noticed details she might have missed before. The tension in Chris's jaw, the way his thumb tapped her knuckle once, twice, the faint sweat at his hairline. He was nervous. Good. When the officiant reached the portion about commitment and honesty, Chris visibly relaxed, assuming momentum was on his side. Lily allowed herself a small smile, lowering her eyes at the exact right moments, playing the part perfectly. Across the room, Adrian watched from his seat, expression unreadable. The officiant turned to Lily. "Do you take Christopher Hale to be your lawfully wedded husband?" The room fell silent. This was the moment everyone expected tears, joy, a whispered yes. Lily lifted her head. "I'd like to say something first," she said calmly. A murmur swept the room. Chris stiffened, his smile faltering for the first time. "Lily," he murmured under his breath, warning and pleading all at once. She didn't look at him. She looked at the guests. And the lie finally began to crack. The room seemed to tilt as Lily's words settled over the guests. "I'd like to say something first." It wasn't loud. It wasn't emotional. That calm was what made it dangerous. Chris's fingers tightened around hers, his smile frozen in place. "Lily," he whispered, teeth barely moving. "This isn't the time." She gently removed her hands from his grasp. "It is," she said, still facing the audience. A hush fell so complete that even the distant city noise seemed to vanish. The officiant stepped back instinctively, unsure of his role now. Cameras lowered. Then slowly, a few rose again. Something irreversible was happening, and everyone could feel it. Lily scanned the room once, deliberately. Her father's confused concern, her aunt's pale face. The investors seated near the front, suddenly alert. Then, finally, she spoke. "I've spent most of my life creating perfect moments for other people," she began. "Weddings, celebrations, promises. I believed that if you planned carefully enough, if you gave enough, honesty would naturally follow." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Chris shook his head slightly, a silent plea. "You're upset," he murmured. "Let's talk later." Lily didn't look at him. "Tonight," she continued, "I learned that this ceremony, this marriage, wasn't about love. It was about leverage.
Gasps broke through the silence. Chris's composure cracked. "That's not true," he said sharply, finally raising his voice. "This is inappropriate." Lily reached into her clutch and took out her phone. "This afternoon," she said, "I overheard a conversation, a private call. One where my fiancé discussed marrying me for appearances while maintaining a relationship with someone else." Her gaze shifted briefly toward the back row. Sabrina stiffened. Chris stepped forward. "This is insane," he snapped, panic bleeding through his anger. "You're embarrassing yourself." Lily tapped her screen. The recording played. Chris's own voice filled the ballroom, unmistakable and clear. Calm, calculating, talking about timing, about investors, about handling the separation quietly after the wedding. A collective inhale swept through the guests like a wave. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Chris lunged for the phone, but Adrian was already standing, his presence firm and immovable.
Security shifted subtly, blocking the aisle. "That recording," Adrian said evenly, "has been authenticated." Chris's face drained of color. "This is out of context," he shouted. "She's twisting things." Lily met his eyes then, finally. "You said my name like a transaction," she said softly. "There's no context that fixes that." From the back, Sabrina stood abruptly. "You promised me," she began, then stopped, realizing every eye was now on her. The room erupted into whispers, disbelief spreading like fire. Lily turned back to the officiant, then to the guests. Her voice didn't waver. "I won't say I do to a lie." She stepped back from the altar, and in that moment, the wedding ended, and the reckoning began. For a moment, no one moved. The recording ended, but Chris's voice lingered in the air like smoke that refused to clear. The ballroom, once filled with soft music and polite smiles, had transformed into something raw and exposed. People sat frozen, eyes darting between Lily, Chris, and the woman standing stiffly near the back. Sabrina. Chris broke first. "This is a setup," he barked, turning toward the guests with forced laughter that fooled no one. "You're all witnessing a private misunderstanding taken completely out of context." A few heads shook. Someone near the front whispered, "That was his voice." Lily stood very still, hands folded at her waist, no longer trembling. She had expected rage. She had expected denial. What surprised her was how small Chris suddenly looked without his mask. "Out of context?" she asked quietly. "Then explain the context." Chris opened his mouth and closed it again. Adrian stepped forward, his presence commanding without raising his voice. "For clarity," he said, "this venue has confirmed the recording's timestamp. Additionally, there are financial disclosures tied to this wedding that are now under review." The word review sent a visible shock through the front rows. An older man in a tailored suit leaned toward his companion. "That deal was contingent on personal stability," he murmured. "This changes everything." Chris heard it. His eyes flicked around the room, calculating, searching for allies. He found none. "This is my wedding," he snapped, pointing at Lily. "You don't do this publicly." Lily met his gaze, steady and unafraid. "You made it public the moment you used it as leverage." A sharp intake of breath rippled through the room. Chris's mother rose unsteadily. "Christopher," she whispered, tears forming. "Is this true?" He didn't answer. From the back, Sabrina laughed, short, brittle, defensive. "You told me she wouldn't find out," she said, then immediately clamped a hand over her mouth. Too late. Every head turned toward her. "That's enough," Adrian said, signaling security. "Ma'am, Please step aside." Sabrina's confidence crumbled. "You said this was handled," she hissed at Chris as she was guided toward the aisle. "You said I was protected." Lily watched her pass with a strange sense of detachment. There was no triumph in it, just confirmation. Chris lunged forward. "Lily, wait," he said urgently, dropping his voice. "We can fix this. Just say we're postponing, please." She looked at him for a long moment, at the man she thought she knew, the future she had imagined. Then she shook her head. "No," she said simply. "You don't get to manage the fallout anymore." She turned back to the guests, her voice carrying clear and calm. "Thank you all for being here.
I'm sorry this wasn't the story you expected." She paused, then added, "It's the truth." With that, Lily stepped down from the altar. Behind her, the wedding collapsed into silence, and the consequences began to take shape. The silence Lily left behind was heavier than any scream. She moved slowly down the aisle, the soft fabric of her gown brushing against the polished floor, each step deliberate. No one tried to stop her. No one knew how. The guests remained seated, suspended in shock, as if rising would somehow make them complicit in what they had just witnessed. Behind her, Chris stood frozen at the altar. For the first time in years, he had no script. Whispers swelled into audible fragments. "Did you hear that? He admitted it. That deal, wasn't it supposed to close next week?" Phones came out openly now. Texts flew. This wasn't gossip anymore. It was information, and information moved fast. Chris turned toward Adrian, his voice low and sharp. "You had no right." Adrian met his gaze without flinching. "You had no integrity." That word landed harder than the recording. Chris's attorney, who had been seated confidently in the second row minutes earlier, leaned in close. "We need to leave," he muttered. "Now." Chris shook him off. "No, I can fix this." But even as he spoke, he knew it wasn't true. The room had turned. Power always did when the truth entered without warning. Near the back, Sabrina was being quietly escorted toward a side exit, her posture rigid, her face pale. She twisted once, locking eyes with Chris. "You said I mattered," she spat. "You said she was just temporary." Chris didn't answer. He couldn't. Up front, Lily paused near the doors. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. She could feel the shift behind her, the collapse of something carefully constructed, the soundless fall of a man who had believed himself untouchable. Her father rose slowly, emotion etched into his face. Without a word, he stepped into the aisle and placed a gentle hand on her arm. Lily leaned into him just slightly, enough to steady herself. Adrian moved to address the guests, his voice calm but firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, the venue will be providing assistance as you exit. Tonight's event is concluded." That was all he said. No apologies, no justifications. The truth didn't require either. As Lily stepped through the doors into the hallway, the noise behind her erupted. Questions, arguments, disbelief finally released. She welcomed the distance. The hallway felt quiet, almost sacred, compared to the chaos she'd left behind. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. "You ruined everything." Lily stared at it for a long moment, then locked her phone and slipped it back into her clutch. "No," she whispered to herself. "I stopped it." Ahead of her, the city waited, unmoved, indifferent, alive. For the first time that night, Lily felt the weight on her chest lift just enough for her to breathe. The wedding was over, but the reckoning had only begun. The hallway outside the ballroom filled quickly with noise, but not the kind that followed celebration. Voices overlapped in sharp fragments, confused, urgent, suspicious. Lily stood near a tall window overlooking Fifth Avenue, her reflection faint against the glass. The city moved as it always did, indifferent to ruined weddings and broken illusions. Behind her, the consequences began to stack up. Adrian's phone rang again. This time, he didn't step away.
"Yes," he said calmly. "You heard correctly."
A pause.
"No, the board was not informed."
Another pause, longer this time.
"I'll send the documentation."
He ended the call and turned toward Lily.
"The lead investor just suspended negotiations," he said. "They're invoking the morality clause."
Lily nodded, absorbing the words slowly. She had known there would be fallout. What she hadn't expected was how fast it would come. Inside the ballroom, raised voices broke through the walls. Chris was arguing now, loud enough to be heard. His confidence had fractured into desperation. "You can't just pull out," he shouted at someone. "This has nothing to do with the company." "It has everything to do with the company," a man's voice snapped back. "You lied." Lily closed her eyes briefly, not in relief, in clarity. Her phone buzzed again, this time from Chris. "Please, talk to me."
"You're destroying my life."
She stared at the message, thumb hovering, then slipped the phone back into her clutch without responding.
"That's an interesting choice of words," Adrian said quietly, glancing at her expression.
"For a man who was willing to destroy yours." Security escorted several guests past them now, faces flushed, conversations hushed. A woman Lily recognized from a venture firm shook her head as she passed. "Unbelievable," she muttered. "Absolutely unbelievable." Chris emerged into the hallway moments later, jacket off, tie loosened, eyes wild. He stopped short when he saw Lily. "You planned this," he said hoarsely. "You humiliated me." Lily looked at him for a long moment, seeing not the man she loved, but the man he had always been. "No," she replied evenly. "I reacted to what you did." He stepped closer.
"You could have handled this privately."
"And let you control the story?" she asked. "Like you planned?" His silence was answer enough. From the far end of the hall, Sabrina's voice echoed briefly, angry, panicked, before fading as security ushered her away. The alliance Chris had depended on was collapsing just as quickly as his public image. Adrian checked his watch. "There will be press interest," he said, "but tonight you don't owe anyone a statement." Lily nodded, feeling exhaustion finally seep in beneath the adrenaline. She had walked into this evening as a bride. She was walking out as something else entirely. Not broken, not ashamed, just awake. Behind her, deals unraveled, reputations burned, and excuses failed to hold. Ahead of her, the city lights waited, steady, honest, real. And for the first time that night, Lily knew she was walking in the right direction.
The fallout didn't creep in quietly. It arrived all at once, loud and undeniable.
Lily sat in a small lounge adjacent to the hotel lobby, wrapped in a borrowed cashmere shawl someone had pressed into her hands without asking. The adrenaline that had carried her through the ceremony was finally draining, leaving behind a bone-deep fatigue. Yet her mind stayed sharp. Too much was still happening. Across the room, Adrian stood with two men Lily recognized from the front rows, both senior partners in firms Chris had bragged about for months. Their expressions were no longer polite, they were surgical. "We need clarification," one of them said, "immediately."
Adrian nodded. You'll get it, but not from her. The man glanced at Lily, then away as if embarrassed. Understood. That single exchange said everything. An hour ago, Lily had been a decorative detail in Chris's success story.
Now she was untouchable. Chris burst through the lobby doors moments later, ignoring the stares. His hair was disheveled, his voice already raised. "This is unbelievable," he snapped, pointing toward Lily. "She's manipulating all of you." One of the investors turned slowly. "No," he said. "You did that yourself." Chris froze. "You misrepresented your personal and professional conduct," the man continued. "You allowed us to believe this marriage was genuine, stable. That matters when trust is the currency." "It was genuine," Chris insisted desperately. "She's overreacting." Lily stood. The room quieted immediately. "I didn't overreact," she said calmly. "I responded." Chris rounded on her. "You could have waited. You could have handled it privately." "And let you continue lying?" Lily asked. "Let you sign contracts under false pretenses?" One of the men shook his head. "We're suspending all negotiations," he said to Chris. "Effective immediately." The words hit like a physical blow. Chris staggered back a step. "You can't do that." "We already did." That was when Sabrina's name came up again. "She's been contacting our communications team," another partner added, "trying to spin this, claiming she was misled." Chris's face twisted. "She's lying." The man raised an eyebrow. "So were you." Silence slammed into the space between them. Lily felt something loosen in her chest. Not joy, not revenge. Release. Chris looked around wildly, searching for someone to stand with him. His parents avoided his gaze. His attorney had quietly disappeared. Even the people who had once praised his ambition now looked at him like a liability. Sabrina's voice echoed faintly from outside as she argued with hotel security, her confidence cracking under pressure. The partnership she'd thought she controlled was already dissolving. Adrian stepped closer to Lily. "You should leave," he said gently. "What happens next doesn't require you." She nodded. As she turned toward the exit, Chris called out to her, his voice breaking for the first time. "Lily! Please!" She stopped, but didn't face him. "You didn't lose me tonight," she said quietly. "You never had me." Then she walked away. Behind her, alliances collapsed, contracts unraveled, and the story Chris had built around himself finally burned down to the truth. And Lily Hartman didn't look back. The rain had started some time after Lily left the hotel. She didn't notice it at first. The city lights blurred against the windshield as the car moved slowly through Midtown, red brake lights stretching like broken threads along Fifth Avenue. Her gown was folded beside her now, replaced by a simple coat borrowed from the hotel concierge. It felt strange, like stepping out of a costume after the final act. For the first time that night, there was no one asking her questions. No cameras, no accusations, no expectations. Just silence, broken only by the steady rhythm of rain against glass. Lily leaned her head back and closed her eyes. Her body finally allowed the exhaustion to surface. Her hands ached from clenching too tightly for too long. Her throat burned, not from crying, but from holding herself together. She thought she might feel triumph, vindication, something sharp and victorious. Instead, she felt hollow and free. Her phone buzzed again. Chris. She stared at the screen for several seconds before opening the message. They pulled everything. The deal, the board meeting. Sabrina turned on me.
I need to explain.
Lily read it once, then again. She typed nothing. The driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror, then looked away, respectful of the quiet. Outside, pedestrians hurried under umbrellas, lives continuing as if nothing monumental had just collapsed behind closed doors at a luxury hotel. Lily realized something then. No one else was going to define this moment for her. Not the guests, not the investors, not even Chris. Her phone buzzed again. A new message, this time from Adrian. You did the right thing. If you need anything, legal, professional, or otherwise, I'm here. She felt a surprising warmth at that. Not romantic, not dramatic, just steady, honest. The car stopped outside her apartment building. The doorman's eyes widened briefly when he recognized her, then softened with understanding. He said nothing as he held the door. Upstairs, Lily stood alone in her living room, the quiet almost deafening. The space looked exactly the same as it had that morning. Flowers on the counter, unopened champagne chilling in the fridge, vow drafts still saved on her laptop. Evidence of a future that no longer existed. She moved slowly, deliberately, and shut the laptop without opening it. In the bathroom, she caught her reflection again. No veil, no jewelry. Just her face, bare and tired, and unmistakably herself. I survived, she whispered. Not the wedding. The lie. Outside, the rain softened, easing into a gentle drizzle. Lily changed into comfortable clothes and sat by the window watching the city breathe. Somewhere across town, Chris was scrambling, negotiating, pleading. Somewhere else, Sabrina was rewriting her story. But here, right here, Lillian Hartman was finally still. The night after the ruin didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the beginning of something honest. Morning arrived quietly without ceremony or apology. Pale light filtered through Lily's windows, settling gently across the living room like it had done every other day of her life. The world hadn't stopped because her wedding had collapsed. If anything, it had moved on too easily. Lily sat at her kitchen table with a mug of untouched coffee, her laptop open in front of her. She hadn't planned to work. She hadn't planned to think. But her instincts, sharpened by years of managing chaos behind the scenes, refused to let her rest. They were loose ends. She opened her email, scrolling slowly, methodically. Vendor confirmations, contracts, guest lists, and then something that didn't belong. An email thread forwarded months ago, buried under logistics and seating charts. The subject line was innocuous. Updated documentation. She clicked it. Her breath caught. Attached were financial disclosures Chris had asked her to review casually. At the time, she'd trusted him. Trusted that he wouldn't use her name without consent. Now, reading with clear eyes, she saw it instantly. Her personal information listed as a marital guarantor. Lily's hands went cold. She opened another attachment, then another. Lease agreements, preliminary loan documents, all referencing her as a spouse, a stabilizing factor, a risk mitigator. He hadn't just planned to marry her. He had planned to use her. The realization landed with a dull, furious weight. If the deal had gone through, if the wedding had happened, she would have been legally bound to obligations she'd never agreed to. Debts, liabilities, consequences that would have followed her long after Chris walked away, quietly. Her phone buzzed. Sabrina. Lily stared at the name, pulse steady, then answered. You think you won, Sabrina said without greeting. Her voice was sharp, stripped of confidence. But you don't know everything. Then say it, Lily replied calmly. A pause. He's done this before. Another woman, different city, same playbook. Lily closed her eyes. I have proof, Sabrina continued quickly. Emails, messages. I didn't think I'd need them until last night. And why tell me now? Lily asked. Because he turned on me, Sabrina snapped. And because I won't take the fall alone. There it was. Not redemption. Self-preservation. Send them, Lily said. Minutes later, her inbox filled with forwarded correspondence, patterns repeating across years. Promises, plans, lies neatly recycled. Lily sat back, absorbing it all.
This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about intent. She forwarded everything to Adrian with a brief message. You should see this. His response came quickly. This changes the scope completely. Lily closed the laptop and finally took a sip of her now cold coffee. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark screen. Tired, yes, but unflinching. Chris had underestimated her, not because she was kind, but because he thought kindness meant weakness. He was wrong. And now, for the first time, Lily understood just how much he was about to lose. The weight of what Lily had uncovered settled in slowly, not as panic, but as a heavy, undeniable truth. She sat on the edge of her couch, phone in her hand, staring at the emails Sabrina had sent. Each message confirmed the same pattern. Chris charming, promising, positioning women like pieces on a board. Love had never been the goal. Control had. For the first time since the night before, Lily felt something close to anger. Not explosive, not reckless. Focused. Her phone rang. Adrian. I reviewed everything, he said without preamble. This isn't just personal misconduct. It's systemic misrepresentation. Lily exhaled. What does that mean? It means his professional credibility is finished, Adrian replied. And it means you're no longer just a witness. You're protected. Protected. The word landed differently than she expected. She'd spent years protecting others, clients, families, moments. She'd never assumed anyone would step in to protect her. Adrian continued, My legal team is expanding the review. If Chris signed anything using your name or status without consent, that's actionable, civilly and criminally. Lily closed her eyes, absorbing the shift. Just 24 hours ago, she had been a bride, preparing vows. Now she was standing at the edge of a legal storm she hadn't created, but could no longer avoid. What do you need from me? She asked. Rest today, Adrian said. Tomorrow, we move carefully, strategically. After the call ended, Lily sat in silence for a long moment. The apartment felt different now, safer. Not because the danger had passed, but because she could finally see it clearly. A knock came at the door. Her Aunt Margaret stood there, eyes red, posture uncertain. May I come in? Lily stepped aside. They sat at the kitchen table, sunlight spilling between them. Margaret twisted her hands. I owe you an apology, she said quietly. I told you to stay silent, to protect everyone else. Lily didn't respond right away. I was wrong, Margaret continued. You protected yourself. And you were right to. Something inside Lily loosened at those words, not because she needed validation, but because she hadn't realized how much she'd expected resistance instead. I didn't want to hurt anyone, Lily said softly. I just couldn't let him keep lying. Margaret reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You didn't hurt anyone who didn't deserve the truth. After Margaret left, Lily stood by the window again, watching the city move. She thought of the woman she'd been, careful, accommodating, afraid of disruption. She thought of the woman she was becoming, measured, alert, unwilling to be used. Her phone buzzed one last time that afternoon. A message from Chris. "You don't understand what you've done. Please, call me." Lily read it once, then she deleted it. She wasn't responsible for his downfall. He was.
And for the first time since she overheard that call in the hallway, Lily felt something unmistakable rise in her chest. Not relief, resolve. The turning point had passed. Now came the outcome. The meeting room on Park Avenue was nothing like a courtroom, yet it felt more final. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Manhattan skyline, indifferent and bright, as if the city itself were watching. Lily sat at the long conference table, hands folded, posture straight. She hadn't chosen this place. Adrian had. Neutral ground, professional, unforgiving. Across from her, 3 members of the investment committee reviewed documents on their tablets in silence. The air was thick with concentration, not emotion. This wasn't about heartbreak. This was about facts. Chris arrived late. The door opened sharply, and he stepped inside with a confidence that didn't quite fit anymore. His suit was immaculate, but the man inside it looked frayed. He stopped when he saw Lily, surprise flashing across his face before hardening into something defensive. "So this is what you wanted," he said bitterly. "An audience." Lily didn't respond. She didn't need to. Adrian leaned forward slightly. "This is a formal review, Christopher. Your conduct triggered it." Chris laughed once, sharp and hollow. "Because my fiancée got emotional?" One of the committee members looked up slowly. "Because you falsified material representations." The word falsified cut through the room. Chris's smile vanished. "That's not true." "Isn't it?" another member asked calmly, tapping her screen. "These emails reference marital guarantees that did not legally exist at the time. And these communications," she swiped, "show intent to mislead." Chris turned toward Lily, anger flaring. "You gave them this." "I gave them the truth," Lily said quietly. The room fell silent again. Adrian spoke next. "Additionally, we've received corroborating evidence from a third party, establishing a pattern of similar behavior." Chris stiffened. "Sabrina." "No one confirmed it. No one needed to." "You used personal relationships to secure professional advantage," the first committee member said. "That violates both ethical standards and contractual terms." Chris pushed back his chair abruptly. "You're overreacting. This happens all the time." "Not like this," the woman replied evenly. "And not with documentation." Lily watched his face as realization finally set in. This wasn't a setback. This was an ending. "What happens now?" Chris asked, his voice lower, stripped of bravado. Adrian didn't soften his tone. "All current negotiations are terminated. Your firm will issue a statement distancing itself from your actions. Further review will determine legal consequences." Chris's gaze flicked to Lily again, something like panic breaking through. "You don't have to let this go this far." Lily met his eyes, calm and steady. "I didn't take it this far," she said. "You did." No anger, no raised voice, just truth. The committee stood, signaling the meeting's end. Decisions had been made, lines drawn. As Chris gathered his things with shaking hands, Lily remained seated. She didn't feel victorious. She felt certain. Outside, the city roared on,
deals closing and collapsing every second. One more man losing power barely registered. But for Lily, this moment mattered. The fall was no longer personal. It was official. And for the first time since the night before, she knew, without doubt, that it was over.
The cafe overlooked Central Park, its tall windows fogged slightly from the early spring chill. Lily arrived 10 minutes early and chose a table near the window, her back straight, her coat still on. She wasn't nervous. If anything, she felt strangely detached, as if this meeting belonged to a version of herself she'd already outgrown. Sabrina arrived late. She slid into the chair opposite Lily without ordering anything, dark sunglasses still on despite the dim light inside. Gone was the confident PR strategist who had smiled during the ceremony. This woman's shoulders were tense, her movements sharp and defensive. "You got what you wanted," Sabrina said flatly. "He's done." Lily didn't respond right away. She watched a couple walking their dog outside, laughing softly, unaware of the conversation about to unfold. "I didn't want anything from you," she said finally. "You asked to meet." Sabrina let out a short, bitter laugh and removed her sunglasses. Dark circles framed her eyes. "Because I'm not going down alone." There it was. Not remorse. Strategy. "He promised me things," Sabrina continued, voice tight. "A future. A role. He said you were temporary, that the wedding was a step, not a destination." Lily met her gaze calmly. "And you believed him?" "I verified him," Sabrina snapped. "I checked his past. Or I thought I did." She hesitated, then reached into her bag and placed her phone on the table. "There are others, before you, different cities, same pattern." Lily didn't touch the phone. "You already sent me some of that." "There's more," Sabrina said. "Voice messages, documents. He coached me on what to say if anyone asked, on how to frame you if things went wrong." Lily inhaled slowly. The weight of it settled, heavy but unsurprising. "Why tell me now?" Sabrina's jaw tightened. "Because when everything blew up, he tried to pin it on me. Told his lawyer I manipulated him." Her voice cracked despite herself. "I won't be his shield." For a moment, Lily felt a flicker of something close to pity. Not because Sabrina was innocent, but because she was finally seeing the cost of aligning herself with someone who only valued control. "I'm not here to punish you," Lily said quietly. "That's not my job." Sabrina looked up sharply. "Then why come?" "Because I wanted to see if you understood what you helped do," Lily replied, "and whether you'd stop helping him." Sabrina swallowed. "I will." Lily nodded once. "That's all." She stood, slipping her coat fully on. Sabrina looked up at her, something uncertain flickering across her face. "You really walked away," she said. "Most people wouldn't." Lily paused. "Most people are taught not to." She turned toward the door, leaving Sabrina alone at the table, staring at a phone full of evidence and a future that suddenly looked very different. Outside, the air felt clean. Lily breathed deeply, her steps light as she walked toward the park. Behind her, the last confession had been made, and with it, the final tie to Chris's world quietly snapped. The press didn't wait long. By the next morning, the story had spread beyond whispered conversations and private meetings. Headlines avoided Lily's name at first, focusing instead on a high-profile executive removed amid ethical review. But inside the industry, everyone knew exactly what had happened and why. Lily watched it unfold from the quiet of her apartment, the television muted,
headlines scrolling silently across the screen.
She didn't feel the need to hear commentators dissect a night she remembered with perfect clarity. What mattered was what followed, not how loudly it echoed. Adrian called mid-morning. "It's done," he said. "Chris has been formally terminated." His firm issued a statement citing misconduct and misrepresentation. Lily closed her eyes briefly, not in satisfaction, in acceptance. "And the contracts?" she asked. "Nullified," Adrian replied. "Everyone tied to his disclosures. There's also an internal investigation underway. It won't be quick, but it will be thorough." Lily thanked him and ended the call. She stood by the window again, watching sunlight catch on passing cars below. The city didn't celebrate justice. It simply continued. That felt right. Her phone buzzed one last time that day with a message she hadn't expected. Chris's mother. "I'm sorry," the text read, "for not seeing it sooner, for asking you to stay quiet." Lily stared at the words for a long moment before replying. "I hope he learned something from this." It was the only answer she could give, honestly. Later that afternoon, Lily stepped into a familiar office building, not as a bride, not as an accomplice, but as herself. Adrian met her in the lobby, offering a nod of acknowledgement rather than congratulations. "There's something else," he said as they walked. "Several clients asked about you." She glanced at him. "About me?" "They saw how you handled yourself," Adrian continued. "Under pressure, with integrity." He paused. "They want to work with you." The irony wasn't lost on her. The night meant to erase her had revealed her instead. In a conference room overlooking the skyline, Lily listened as possibilities were outlined. Consulting, partnerships, autonomy. Not charity. Opportunity. "I'll think about it," she said. Adrian smiled slightly. "Take your time." As she left the building, Lily felt something shift inside her. Not triumph, not bitterness. Closure. Chris had lost everything he tried to secure through deception. His reputation, his position, the illusion of control. Lily had lost a wedding and gained herself. That evening, she walked through Central Park as dusk settled, the city softening around her. Couples passed, laughter floating through the air. Once the sight might have stung. Now it didn't. Justice hadn't arrived with fireworks or applause. It came quietly, firmly, in contracts voided and doors closed to the wrong man. And Lily kept walking forward, knowing, with certainty, that the balance had been restored. 3 months later, the city felt different, not because it had changed, but because Lily had. Morning light filled her new office, a modest space with tall windows and a quiet view of the street below. No grand signage yet, no rush. Just a clean desk, a laptop, and a small stack of notebooks waiting to be filled. Lily moved through the room with ease, coffee in hand, comfortable in the silence she had learned not to fear. The phone rang. "Lillian Hartman speaking." A familiar voice answered, calm and warm. "I wanted to congratulate you," Adrian said. "Your calendar is booked through the end of the year." Lily smiled softly. "I didn't plan for it to happen this fast." "You didn't plan to be seen either," he replied. "You just were." After they hung up, Lily sat by the window for a moment, letting that settle. She hadn't chased redemption. She hadn't demanded justice. She had simply refused to lie. And somehow, that had been enough. Her business had grown quietly, built on referrals and trust. Clients didn't want spectacle. They wanted someone who wouldn't collapse when things went wrong.
Someone steady. Someone honest. She closed her laptop and headed out, walking toward a nearby cafe. The city buzzed around her, horns, footsteps, conversations overlapping. But it no longer overwhelmed her. She had learned how to stand inside noise without losing herself. Adrian was already there, seated near the window, a coffee untouched in front of him. He stood when he saw her, not out of formality, but respect. "You look well," he said. "So do you." They talked easily, about work, about the city, about nothing urgent at all. There was no pressure, no unspoken expectation, just presence. When he asked if she wanted to join him for dinner that weekend, it wasn't framed as a rescue or a promise. It was a choice. "Yes," Lily said, because she wanted to, not because she needed to. That night, alone in her apartment, Lily unpacked the last box she had avoided for months. Inside was the wedding dress, folded carefully, preserved for a future that never came. She ran her hand over the fabric once, then closed the box. Some things were meant to be honored, not kept. She donated the dress the next day. As spring turned towards summer, Lily found joy in small rituals, morning walks, fresh flowers on her desk, evenings spent reading or simply watching the city breathe. Love didn't feel like a deadline anymore. It felt like space. She hadn't been rewarded with a fairy tale ending. She had been rewarded with something better. Clarity, dignity, the freedom to choose. And this time, whatever came next would be real. So, that's how the story closes. And if you're still here with us right now, truly still here to this moment, then maybe something in this journey touched your heart in a quiet way. Maybe you saw a part of yourself in Lily. Maybe you remembered a moment when you stayed silent longer than you should have, or when you finally chose yourself and everything changed. The real lesson of this story isn't about betrayal or revenge. It's about truth, about the courage to stop negotiating your own worth just to keep the peace. The Stoics believed that healing begins the moment we accept reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Lily didn't control what was done to her, but she chose how she would respond. And that choice reshaped her life. If this story resonated with you, let it be a reminder. Dignity is never something you earn by suffering quietly. It's something you protect by standing honestly. Sometimes walking away isn't a loss, it's alignment. And sometimes the life waiting for you on the other side of truth is calmer, clearer, and more real than the one you were afraid to leave. If this story spoke to you, please like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep telling stories that heal, challenge, and remind us we're not alone.